and welcome everybody today to another of the Staffordshire Chambers of Commerce webinars. We're getting pretty good at these and we're having a fantastic range of topics. And you can find all of the ones that we've had in the past on our website in our webinar library. However, I'm really pleased that we have this one today. It is a subject close to my heart, both because it's about leadership, but also because it's working with one of my favourite partners, which is the Armed Forces. We have a very strong relationship with them and are particularly proud of the fact that the WMRFC, and I can never quite remember what they all stand for, but are a patron, and it has made a massive difference to us. From the point of view of the fact of Staffordshire is a very strong military county, it is very important for the Chambers to represent all areas of interest across the county. We're also very proud that we have been a signatory of the Armed Forces Covenant and really have enjoyed the way that that has helped look at the work that we do through that lens and making sure that we can support the Armed Forces and the veterans and young people who are cadets across the county. We've found that it has done a couple of things really for us and why it has been important to us. As I say, it's enabled us to work with the veterans to help them try and get into employment. It's enabled us to help businesses to develop reservists. We also have had reservists in our own workforce in the past and are very keen to support that as much as possible. We've given a lot of support to families, working with families based in Staffordshire to help them to set up their own businesses. And the one that is dearest to my heart is the work that we do with the cadets, and I'm hoping over the next couple of years that we will build on this even more. I have seen how brilliant the cadets are and how it changes young people, and believe that it is something that should be supported more and more across the area, especially in a time where we know that young people are going to have suffered quite a lot with COVID-19 and the results of the crisis. And so we really want to support more and more of that work through our chamber members and through the work that we do ourselves. I think the other point I would just like to say as well about being a signatory is that it's helped us unlock our expertise and our interest in our own workforce in the work that the Armed Forces do, as I've just sort of articulated. But also it's helped unlock the feeling that that our members have for the Armed Forces. Whenever we put on an event or whenever we talk about them, and especially when we had sponsorship for the awards, where we had the cadets and we had the drums and it was just fantastic, that it really made the businesses who came there understand and appreciate, and we're able to show their appreciation of the work that the Armed Forces do for us all. And I would encourage every business to sign the covenant because I think it is such a great way to show and articulate that commitment, and it does help your workforce and your customers see the sorts of values that you have and that you stand for. I'm also really pleased that we have a very strong link on our Chamber Council, and who I will introduce in a moment. I think I meant to say also that we're sorry that Richard Maybury can't attend, but we have the irreplaceable Mike Frewer to take his place. Colonel Mike Frewer is a Chamber past president and he's a current council member. He has been a staunch supporter of the Chamber for many years, and we are really pleased that we've been able to continue our commitment working with him in his new role. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon and welcome to everybody. Well, as you've got me, I'd better say a few words about myself. I've been a board member of the West Midlands Reserve Forces and Cadets Association. It is a mouthful, Sarah. And I'm Honorary Colonel of the Staffordshire Army Cadet Force. And for the last 9 years, I've organised the Stoke-on-Trent military tattoo on behalf of ABF, the Soldiers Charity in Staffordshire. In my own work, in my working life, over the years, I've employed countless ex-service personnel, and I still do. And the relevance of that we shall see in a moment or two. So down to business. The agenda is a very short one. We have a formal signing of an Armed Forces Covenant and followed by 2 excellent speakers. So first of all, I'd like to say a little bit in explanation about the Armed Forces Covenant itself. Quite simply, it's a public statement of support for all those who serve, have served, in the armed forces and all their families to help encourage that support and to ensure that they're all treated with respect and fairness in our communities, the economy, and in society in general. Now, as you heard from Sarah, Staffordshire Chambers has supported these principles over many, many years, in spades, in fact, and I can personally testify to that. And again, to reinforce the fact that the Chamber was an early signatory of this particular covenant, and that has been recognised by the Ministry of Defence Employer Recognition Scheme with a silver award, well deserved, and there's also a bronze award at entry level, progressing to silver, then gold, dependent upon the level of commitment that's then offered. And I must say that participation in the scheme is particularly good for businesses, and I think Sarah has helped to outline that as well. When we employ ex-service men and women and reservists, they bring special new transferable skill sets and their valuable training to the civilian workplace. And we've all seen that admirably demonstrated recently by military support to the National Health Service. I'm sure we'd all agree with that. So now we progress to the covenant signing ceremony. And at this point, I'm very pleased to welcome and present Martin Murphy, who will sign on behalf of his Elite Leadership Global Academy. Martin is a former soldier and with a special forces background, and he is an author, speaker, and advisor on the subjects of leadership, elite teams, peak performance, and personal development. He has considerable experience of living in and dealing with the effects of challenging environments, and when he speaks after the signing ceremony, he will introduce us to the Stoic Pilgrim, which is the title of this event, of course, offering some insight into how, as business leaders, we might best prepare ourselves and our teams to manage returning to normal. Martin, I believe you'd like to say a few words about why you're signing the covenant this afternoon.
Okay, yes, thank you, Michael. Well, on top of what's already been said, when has there ever been a time when we needed people who were agile, creative, enterprising, resourceful? And I think that that's the kind of thing that happens when you're involved with the military. You're expected to be adaptable and creative and enterprising. And I think with the challenges that businesses face at the moment and society at large, as has already been mentioned, the military have got certain characteristics and skill sets that are very valuable in these kind of times. I think with respect to veterans, there's a lot of talk these days about mental health and how it affects people, ex-service people, for instance. And one of the big problems that military people have is that when they come out of what's really quite a family, they're kind of looking for something. They're quite often lost. And I think that if people, society at large, wants to really help with the mental health side of things for veterans, for instance, it's a good idea if they can then welcome them. And so really, I think it's a win-win for society and businesses and for the veterans. Businesses right now with COVID, returning to the new normal, really need people, as I said, who are used to being in situations which are often termed as volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And I think that the military expertise is really good and adaptable and suitable for that kind of environment. So businesses win in that respect, and I think that veterans really will win if people welcome them and you know, encourage them to get involved so that they don't feel this sense of loss so much for when they leave one family and are welcomed into another. So I think that's you know, this whole concept, this whole idea is very valuable for both sides. It's a win-win for both, I think.
Right, thank you, Martin. Just bear with me a moment while I introduce Lieutenant Colonel Chris Carter, MBE, who will countersign on behalf of the Ministry of Defence. Colonel Chris is a serving Army Reserve officer, currently leading directing staff at the Joint Services and Staff College. He is also the RFCA West Midland Vice Chairman, and he's a former commanding officer of the 4th Battalion of the Mercian Regiment. So, Colonel Chris, a few words from you, please.
Just to echo what both yourself, Mike, and Martin have said with respect to you know, why we have an Armed Forces Covenant, why is this thing necessary? And I think it's an oft-quoted statistic that there's only 3 people in 1,000 in the country these days who is a serving member of the armed forces. So there's also another oft-quoted statistic that you're more likely to know somebody who's been to prison than maybe to know somebody who's been in the armed forces. I don't know if that's true, but it speaks to the fact that within the armed forces community, we have to work increasingly hard these days to reach out to the society that we ultimately serve in order to ensure mutual understanding, both of the armed forces by wider society, and also for the armed forces to keep in touch with and remain relevant to wider society. And that is one of the additional aims of the Armed Forces Covenant, which is in addition to looking after the needs of the individual, both serving and retired, and their families, so that no one is disadvantaged as a result of service to the nation. And one of the benefits we see to businesses through the Armed Forces Covenant is opening up the pool of talent that is, without a doubt, the service leaver to opportunities within civilian life, and also to enable civilian companies to better recognise the potential which is out there and enable them to speak, you know, the strange language that service men and women understand, and to make those connections between both business, the private sector, the public sector, and the armed forces community. And to that extent, you know, absolutely delighted that Martin, on behalf of his company, is making the decision to sign the Armed Forces Covenant today, and we welcome him into the community.
Thank you, Chris. So now we will move to the formal signing of the covenant with all due virtual ceremony, and I gather this is something of a first, because before our very eyes, and this is a cue, here it is, the document will be signed. Here we come.
Ooh, it's gone.
Bear with me, technical glitch by me there, sorry.
We're pioneering this, so.
There we go. Can you all see that okay?
Excuse the handwriting.
Brilliant, fantastic.
Very good, thank you.
The
Laura.
X would have been better, but there you go.
And thank you both. It is a first, I understand, and we've achieved it. Well, thank you both. And now I'm going to hand over to Phil Sinclair, Regional Employer Engagement Director, and he's going to introduce our speakers, and he will chair a Q&A session after that. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Colonel Mike. First of all, Martin, on behalf of the Armed Forces Covenant, can I also express my thanks for your signing the covenant today, and it's a huge pleasure to sort of welcome you to the growing Armed Forces Covenant family that we have here in the West Midlands. Good afternoon, everybody. As Colonel Mike said, my name is Phil Sinclair. I work with Colonel Mike and Colonel Richard Maybury at the West Midlands Reserve Forces and Cadets Association. I just want to say a few words about my role. So the Armed Forces Covenant in Business is delivered by the Ministry of Defence's Defence Relationship Management Organisation. And as one of 2 regional employee engagement directors in the West Midlands, I am part of DRM's network of reads that cover the whole of the United Kingdom. The network, that is, not just me. DRM partners with organisations throughout the UK to support civilian employment for the armed forces community, which includes reservists, military spouses and their partners, veterans, and cadet force adult volunteers, because the cadets do need their adult volunteers to do the training, and they are incredibly important enabling components of that fantastic organisation. So we do advocate cadet force adult volunteers. Now, my role is to advise organisations on how to improve fairness for the armed forces community in the consumer market, and also to encourage forces-friendly human resource policies. And as Reeds, representing DRM, we support employers across the UK to recruit and retain members of the armed forces community so that businesses can access those transferable skills that Colonel Mike just spoke about, that former personnel, service personnel bring to the civilian workplace. Our primary engagement tool to satisfy that end is the Armed Forces Covenant, and you've just witnessed a live signing of the Covenant today. And here we help organisations to develop appropriate pledges that reflect how their organisation can best show their support. And once committed, we then cement and strengthen that engagement through the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme that you just heard Colonel Mike speak about. Defence is very keen to recognise supportive behaviour appropriately as an acknowledgement of the value that businesses bring into meeting their defence people objectives. The Employer Recognition Scheme encourages employers to support defence and inspire others to do the same, encompassing bronze, silver and gold awards for employer organisations that pledge, the bronze level, demonstrate, the silver level, and advocate, the gold level, support to defence and the armed forces community as a whole, aligning their values to the Armed Forces Covenant. So that's my role. For those wishing to know more, please do let the Chamber know. I'm sure they'd be delighted to signpost to me. Alternatively, if you Google Armed Forces Covenant, it'll take you to the .gov.uk website, and you can find a whole plethora of information about it there. But that's me, that's my role. I'm here to support businesses in the region, very happy to do so. Please do get in touch. Any questions you have, we can deal with those later on. So in the meantime, thank you. Now I would like to hand over to Martin. I'm not going to repeat the words Colonel Mike said, but I'm incredibly grateful to Martin for agreeing to do this. And I must admit, I've enjoyed our relationship over Zoom over the last few months as we've got to this position. Martin, over to you.
Thank you. You cannot start screen sharing while so bear with me a second. I have a few slides. Can we see those slides? Thumbs up, anyone? Yep. So I've been asked to speak for a few minutes about leadership through challenging times, both leading yourself and leading others. We've called it Stoic Pilgrim, and the actual name of that came around from a conversation I was having with the people down in Hereford, their Human Performance Unit, and also Manchester Metropolitan University. And although they're very good at the military, are very good with their physical side, they were looking at other areas where we can improve the mental aspect of dealing with challenging times. So I came up with the term Stoic Pilgrim, and the Pilgrim idea comes from Flockhart's poem about "We are the pilgrims, master, we shall go, always a little further." And so I thought the idea of pilgrims travelling through time and having to endure things, that led me to the idea of Stoicism. A lot of therapies are based on kind of Stoic principles, if you like. So anyway, we'll just have a look through these slides and get some ideas and tips that you might find helpful through the challenging times that we're experiencing at the moment. Next. So let's have a look, see if I can just, that's it, right. So whenever something happens that's kind of out, seems to come from left field, we always think things come from, you know, that just appear overnight, as it were, but quite often, because of a thing called probability neglect, we're not very good at reacting to things that are coming from afar. But whenever that does happen, what there is usually a dip in performance until we get to some sort of acceptance. Then we respond and adapt and hopefully get to new opportunities. And as business owners and leaders of businesses, if you like, you want to get across that dip as fast as possible. So that means getting to reality as quickly as possible. Let's have a look. Let's see if I can do it that way. Ooh. Yeah, so in situations like this, the leader is the person that's setting the tone, as it were. There are usually three types of response in a crisis. There's the fear-focused approach, which is basically read lots of media, consume what is in there, and then because of that continual focus on the negativity and the news, there's a lot of fear present, and that means that, you know, it's difficult to make good decisions, if you like. There's the unfocused approach, which is you may go into a denial phase or playing the wait and see game, which is probably dismissing the challenges ahead and waiting for everything to return to business as usual. And then there's the people that are accepting of reality, get mission focused. They just roll up the sleeves, get involved, ask for ideas from the teams, and create a plan of action and move forward. And they're hoping to go across that dip that we mentioned earlier as quickly as possible and springboard out the other side more agile. Under pressure, we exhibit more of who we are. So some people become over controlling, and so they have a need for more data and details before making a decision. And of course, that can slow things down in an emergency. There are those who are overconfident and they become even more confident. Entrepreneurs quite often fall into this category. So they want to compete with the challenge, and so they jump in, tackle it head on. And but that's not always useful in kind of a complex situations, which can exacerbate second and third order problems down the line. We've seen a magnificent response by blue light services and the NHS, and we've noticed that people actually rush to the front to help. It's just a good idea to understand that those people may suffer from burnout because they're trying to contribute more of themselves. When it comes to making decisions, they're a little more avoidant of making tough decisions because they have a fear of upsetting people. And there's those that over communicate, so they do a lot of talking and discuss as many options as possible, but they tend to get into these open-ended decision making or groupthink because they don't want to cut off their options. So it's always a good idea to understand what's your kind of response to situations like this. If there's a lot of fear, then it can lead to what I call paradigm blindness. That is, that we don't see the opportunity within the crisis because we're always focused on the problem. There's also this idea of paradigm inertia. If we're being told to swim away from one shark only to find that there's another shark waiting behind us, this kind of stops us from doing what we should do, which is to paradigm shift, actually get out of the water. Now's the time to think about, we'll be going into this stop, start, continue. What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to start doing that's new? and what do we continue and rescue and adapt from what we were doing, if building on what we've done in the past. So in the paradigm shift, you create new rules, new strategies, new modus operandi, and maybe even new values, new behaviors. But basically, it's about creating a brave new world. So, being a Stoic pilgrim, what is a Stoic pilgrim? Well, as we said before, knowing yourself is the Greeks said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And as we've seen before, if you know what kind of response you're likely to have in challenging times, then you can prepare for that and do something about it. There tends to be, we need to be tough. Toughness is made up of all sorts of different things, but we have to be tenacious to keep going in the face of hardship. We have to be adaptable and get up when things, fall. They have to be resilient, and they have to learn from challenges. So you have to have this growth mindset, which is, if you don't learn from the challenges, lessons are always repeated until they're learned. So it's a very good idea to have, an after-action review about what you've done and learn from that. And so in order to do that, you have to have this open-mindedness, be open-minded. Remember that diamonds are found in the dirt and gold in the grit. There's always going to be, once you've secured your position, you need to really look for the opportunities that are out there. And there will be out there, of course. The idealistic realist dreams of a better world, but accepts that the path is difficult. I always encourage teams and businesses to make this kind of mission pact, which is kind of, what's the mission? Why is it important? What have you got to accept going forward? And what do so think about the challenges that you face going forward, and also commit to overcome the challenges no matter what, and then just take the next step. So idealistic realist, they're dreaming of an ideal world, if you like, but they know, they accept how tough it's going to be to get there. And as a leader, you really need this calm demeanor. They say, peace isn't freedom from the storm, but peace amid the storm. And as a leader, it's a good idea to be able to get into the habit of creating these calm moments within the storm, just so that you can think clearly. And also, get away, go for a walk in the countryside, that kind of thing is a great way of changing your mental, emotional state so that you can think more clearly. Viktor Frankl, with a Austrian psychologist, and he was put into the Auschwitz, and most of his family were during the Second World War. And he used the opportunity against, what's the opportunity within this, extreme and harrowing time. And what he found was that observing himself and the fellow people that were in there, he found that the people that had a sense of purpose, I'm going to get out of here, tell people what happened, I'm going to get out and reunite my family. He found that people with a sense of purpose, thrived better or survived better than people that didn't. So it's always a good idea to have a sense of purpose and always be thinking about that. If you're going through some tough times, what is the why am I doing it? Why is this important? What's the big picture here? And why is it important that I contribute to that? So this really works because you get outside of your own self, and if you're this is a big one for the military, is that if you get outside of yourself and you're looking after the people next to you, it means that you're not worried so much about about your own actual situation. If you ask the military, it's always looking after the people next to them that's really important to them. So one of the things that leaders need to be really good at is deciding where the power is in the situation. It's very important not to give your power away. We'll wait and see what the government does, or we'll wait and see what happens in the economy, or wait and see. When you give your power away like that, then obviously you're just helpless, and you become a victim of circumstance. So it's very important to understand that from your personal position. But if you're leading people, then who's got the power to solve the situation. If you've got a team, you really want to pass the power to the team. When Shackleton went to the Antarctic and his boat, the Endurance, got caught up in the ice, what he did do, he made sure that everyone had certain jobs that they could do, so that so that you don't focus on the things that you haven't got power. Think about what you have got power. What can you achieve? Even the little goals that you can do, and just by giving people jobs to do, taking supplies off the ships, or even having a game of football, as you can see on the slide here, it gave people that sense of purpose, that sense of power. And of course, when you've got a sense of power, you actually think and feel differently. So this is to do with neurotransmitters. If we are empowered people experience the world differently. So if there's too much cortisol and if you've got high levels of cortisol and high levels of testosterone in your system, then you will be feel quite stressful, and that's not a good place to be. Cortisol shouldn't be in the system for too long. It's a fight or flight neurotransmitter. However, if you're empowered, then you have higher levels of testosterone, even females, and lower levels of cortisol. And so it makes you think more creatively, it makes you more decisive, more likely to help other people, and overall you just experience the situation in a more positive way. So as a leader, what have you got the power to do, and who do you have to give power to, so to empower them to then help them feel and be more productive. No matter what business you're in the people business first, and so it's a good idea to prioritize the people over the paradigm, I say. As I said before, empowered people are more capable of saving the business, the paradigm, the organization, if it's worth saving. So it's a good idea to look after the people first, and then the people will look after you. So being a leader, what is a leader? It's basically, Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I can move the world. And a leader is the lever, and the place to stand is humility. So leverage the potential of your team or people or your network. Don't try to be the font of all knowledge. Ask other people. Leverage the potential of those around you, the situation, people, and also engage the team in discussions as early as possible if you've got a team of people or your family, and then align the team, get them, right, what's our mission, where are we going, and why is that important? And so align the team towards a mission and purpose. And when people are allowed to have a say in decision making, they call it mission command in the military, pass the authority to the information, and it helps people have ownership of their outcomes. As I said before, direct the power and resources to the front line, empower people, suffer less stress and more effective. Evolve the plan as more information arises. We're talking a lot about challenging and emergent times, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So whenever you make a plan, think that plans are think of them as it's an infinite thinking process, if you like, as opposed to a definite thing. So the plan should be always adapting as you receive more new information, and be radically open with people. Treat people like other adults. Don't fall into the trap of mushroom management, which is being basically kept in the dark and fed on, you know what. Okay, so there's a book here. I wrote a book about From Mercenaries to Missionaries. If you have got a team and you want to understand about the elite team concept, it's a good idea to have a go at the book. And that's me. I stopped sharing there. How was that?
That was fine, Martin. Many thanks indeed for that illuminating short presentation. Again, hopefully people have questions for you after our second speaker. And it gives me huge pleasure now to introduce Andy Sloan from Walking with the Wounded, who are an incredibly important charity, care in the community organisation that does huge and critically important work to support our injured veteran community. And I was very keen to have Andy talk today to illuminate a little bit about what the Walking with the Wounded do. Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Philip. Thanks very much for those kind words, and thank you, Martin, as well. That was a really interesting talk. I've certainly made a number of notes to implement more with my team too. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. Right, thumbs up. We can see that. Okay. Yeah, great. So Walking with the Wounded, some of you may have heard of us, some of you may not. We're one of many military charities. We're very conscious there are a lot out there. Why are we different? Well, we like to think that's because we reach further and we deal with many of those who've fallen between the cracks. One of the first things we always stress is, and it's in line with Lieutenant Colonel Chris's comment earlier about the number of people actually serving now, is that the majority of people who come out of the military as well don't have any issues. They transition successfully and they make fantastic staff and workforce. And it's only the minority who do encounter issues, but obviously it's important that they have the support and are given the opportunity to thrive again in their communities, because they still have the potential to be fantastic employees, to drive forward performance, to really stand out from the crowd. And we certainly see that with the men and women that we engage with. So I want to rattle you through today a little bit about what we do, ways you can get involved with us if you're interested, both operationally in terms of our programs and how staff members might benefit from them, or wider network or family, and then clearly as well in the context of the Covenant, how engaging with us or other military charities, which you may already have associations with, can help your Covenant commitments, to showcase them to your stakeholders, to your staff, to your customers, and generate positive PR around that. So a lot of people have heard about us because of our connections to the Duke of Sussex. We came about in 2010. Our co-founder's nephew lost both legs serving in Afghanistan. He was putting together a trip to the North Pole. He took a number of wounded servicemen with him. Prince Harry, as he was at the time, got involved, was hugely supportive, and we got a lot of PR on the back of that. The key thing to stress is that the expeditions that we do are purely funded by corporate sponsors, and they're a shop window for our programs. What we actually do, the day-to-day, is the piece around employment, mental health, and care coordination. The most recent announcement, we were very fortunate to have the backing of the Duke of Sussex again, is we have another expedition in November in Oman. We just had selection week in the Lake District last week, so we've got six veterans heading out to Oman in November, subject to the world news, obviously, and shining a spotlight on mental health. It's a great platform for us to talk about what we do, what's available, and how the wider business community can better understand the needs of veterans, or, as I say, the minority of veterans who need it. So we support physically, mentally, and socially disadvantaged ex-military through employment, mental health, and care coordination. Employment is the key, and one of the speakers mentioned it at the start about the importance of employment. It's so key for our mental health. It's our sense of pride. It's our ability to look after our family. It's our ability to continue to serve in our community, which is ultimately at the heart of most ex-military, that you're defined by the feeling that you served. It's I served. So employment program, we have a network of employment advisors around the country who work closely with local employers. I'm sure a number of you will be familiar with Chris Carlisle, working in Staffordshire. And so he's doing a great job making introductions, collaborating between as many organisations as possible. We're not here to reinvent the wheel. We're just here to solve the issues that the veterans have. It's about a veteran-focused approach, and we find that a holistic approach is working out the best, because they don't have issues in isolation. It's not just about mental health. It's not just about unemployment. It's not just about the criminal justice system. It's taking an individual, sitting them down, working out where their stress points are, how we can help alleviate them, how that will impact the family, and how we can get them back into, it may not always be an employment outcome, it could be volunteering, but it's a sense of independence, and that drives a big improvement in their mental health, and all the knock-on effects that come from that. We have hubs up in Manchester and the Northeast, and there's a few more in the pipeline. In the Staffs region, it's mainly through Chris Carlisle, who also leans on our Project Nova, which is a criminal justice program, which has a hub in Birmingham, and that's an early intervention piece about identifying veterans who are coming into police custody. It's not rocket science. It's liaising with the custody suites to ensure they now have a question, and they're identifying veterans and then asking the question, would they like support? We speak to one of our guys, and that sparks a conversation, and we can understand what their needs are and plug them into the relevant services to help them. We don't signpost them, we handhold them. We're with them all the way, and that helps us with our outcomes because somebody is with them and following up. And that's where we found with the care coordination piece, it makes a really big difference and improves our outcomes, because often it's a short spell of even just 2-3 weeks of hand-holding somebody, and that gets them back on their true path. They've got the skills within them. They don't need our family. We don't want them to come and join our family in the nicest possible way. We want them back supporting their family and thriving in their own community. So, and I suppose that's why also we've got that comment on there about we're not a high street or household name. We're very fortunate to have the association and the patronage on the expedition side with the Duke of Sussex, which obviously helps significantly with the PR and the reach there. But where we hope that we are and where we want to be is that we are known by all the partners who we work with, and we collaborate with more than 200 organisations as a place to refer veterans to or family members. Because on the mental health side, we have an early intervention program called Head Start, and that's accessible to ex-forces or members of their family, and it's done through GP referral. So everything's got a record with the NHS. So somebody disappears off the radar and pops up somewhere else with another charity down the track, everybody knows what support they've had, if any, and if it's worked. But that Head Start early intervention scheme is really making a difference, because that's delivering private one-to-one mental health care within a week, within 10 days of referral. So it's a really quick approach, which ultimately can save relationships, can save jobs, can save lives too, clearly. And that sort of use, if you have military networks within your company, if you have veterans within your company, reservists, anybody who might need to have a conversation, if they've served a day, then they are able to access this support. So it's referral through a GP. The program's called Head Start, and it's also open to families. So it's a great resource. I put down here the NHS because the NHS are now our principal partner. We are looking at ways that we can help reduce waiting times, ways in which we can identify veterans who are maybe in NHS programs but who aren't responding to the treatment, or probably more pertinently, not attending appointments. And because if we can get them attending appointments, it helps cut waiting lists, helps cut costs, it helps all sorts of aspects of society, and crucially gets that individual in a much better place and able to support themselves and their family. And that comes back to the care coordination piece of actually it's not too much hand-holding and plugging into volunteering opportunities, providing them with a gym pass, driving them to an appointment. Just that short, sharp focus we find makes a huge difference and gets them back up and running. And that's where individuals like Chris Carlisle are amazing. He served, he's got some stories of his own. He's been there, he understands the issues, and he will do his utmost to get that man or woman back into a good place of independence. Throughout the pandemic, we've been operational throughout. Clearly, the men and women we support can't furlough their issues, so we made a commitment to maintain what we do. We managed to adapt and find some other sources of income. One of my main hats during the day is running events, so clearly my calendar has been emptied, so we replace those, and it's through conversations with good people like yourselves that new opportunities come up, and we find new income streams as well. So what's in it for you really in terms of talking to us, and why am I here? Clearly there's, if any people family, staff, need support, please do flag Walking with the Wounded, and particularly the mental health program. It could be of use. In terms of supporting your covenant commitments, we have a number of events, projects. There's the expeditions, which you can get involved with as a company on a small or large scale, with in-kind support, sponsorship, of all levels, which can help you associate with us, associate with some of the many partners that we engage with, deliver your staff a really interesting engagement opportunity or a team building opportunity. It enables you to engage local PR, to generate positive stories in the media, and to reach out and drive new business as well, particularly if you're marketing to the military community, if you have a contract with the MOD, or if your staff or customers overlap with any of those areas. Obviously, there's a great network by signing the covenant and being part of that. The badge itself, I think, is a great addition to anybody's website, even before you start clicking on it and having a read around. And we know that whilst the number of serving military obviously is smaller now, as alluded to earlier, if you look at the number of ex-military, a handful of friends, relatives, supporters, you quickly get up to a figure of 22 million across the UK. So commercially, it is a really important audience segment that you can target, so you can do good with your bottom line. And we believe in you do well by doing good. So anybody we can partner with who wants to support the cause and we can make it a win-win, then all the better. I've got there in slightly smaller print than intended under the volunteering tab, Op Regen, which is a new initiative that's been trialled in Manchester and is rolling out across the UK next year, or they're taking names already. And that's sort of along the lines of the Team Rubicon model of ex-military stepping forwards and volunteering within their communities on projects. Crucially, it's on projects which come from them, initiatives that come from them. But that enables our beneficiaries to join those projects, sometimes leading those projects as captains, to gain experience, to mix in with local employers who come in to support the initiative. Provides great PR, provides great outcomes. We're seeing OpRegen participants gain jobs pretty quickly because they demonstrate their skills there and then on the job. And it's a really engaging piece for companies to get involved with. I know a lot of companies have volunteering days, and so this is a great way of using your time if you are one of those. So do have a look around that if that's of interest as well. And then coming up on our horizons, as I mentioned, my timelines have been wiped out by the pandemic. Obviously, it's had a huge effect on every charity pretty much, and our incomes, and I'm very conscious as well. Many of your businesses, I'm sure, are having to struggle to navigate this time, or at least adapt. So for us, we're putting our fundraising eggs into the back end of the year, Q4, and this is our annual campaign, Walking Home for Christmas, which is essentially a really easy way for you to activate your covenant commitments, to generate some positive local PR, to have some fun with staff. It's free to sign up. We then send people a pack with a Santa hat and information about how to support the cause. And individuals or teams, companies do a walk home from work, or walk to somewhere important to you, or somewhere creative, which enables you a chance to spend time with your team, to spend time with clients, to spend time with loved ones if you're doing it on a personal side. We have leaderboards for individuals, for teams, for organizations. So it's a great way to put your company in the mix and showcase what you're doing. Crucially, in terms of the awards scheme, we've had companies take part who then use that in their awards when they're liaising with Phil and the team to showcase how they are supporting the cause. By taking part in this, you're also promoting clearly our programs and what we do around mental health and employment. So that helps you towards your silver award or your gold award, or reaffirming those commitments generally. And who doesn't look good in a Santa hat? It's always strange to talk about that in July, but time does rattle round, and hopefully we'll all be in a better place by the end of the year. If there's any interest in that campaign or learning more, then do get in touch with me. There are, whatever you are looking at doing at the end of this year. And I know there are lots of military charities out there, lots of wider charities. The charity sector does need your support, and there are lots of opportunities for you to do well by doing good at the back end of the year and help cut through at a busy time for commerce. So thank you very much for listening. That's a whistle-stop tour of Walking with the Wounded. I think we're now going to ask for any general questions about what we're doing, or questions for Martin or the other speakers. But thanks very much for listening, and thanks for getting involved with supporting the Covenant.